From the moment Shane Van Gisbergen entered the NASCAR scene, sharp criticism poured in from both the garage area and the fans. People were quick to label him as nothing but a dedicated road course specialist, someone who would always remain a weakness on oval tracks, with his championship hopes capped at nothing higher than an average career at best. But then the Easter weekend numbers from NASCAR Insights arrived, and that entire narrative shattered in a single night. The adjusted points plus index data does not hide the truth, and what it reveals is a profound, powerful evolution taking place right now, a shift that most people inside the sport are still failing to notice or fully understand. SVG is now performing above the series average on drafting tracks. He is also running above average on short tracks, and on the standard oval tracks, the very same circuits where he was painfully far below the full Cup Series standard just 12 months earlier, he is closing the gap at a pace that has several past champions taking serious notice. This has moved well past the stage of mere potential or distant promise. This is genuine, measurable, and trackable progress being built lap by lap on the ovals. Shane Van Gisbergen made the journey from Auckland, New Zealand to America with a racing resume that would leave any serious motorsport enthusiast absolutely stunned. He arrived carrying 3 Australian Supercars championships, 80 career wins, 3 Bathurst 1000 victories, a win in the Bathurst 12-hour, and a podium finish at the 24 Hours of Daytona. This was never some uncertain gamble chasing an American dream. This was a battle-tested, world-class driver who had already mastered every challenge that road racing could throw at him. Then 2023 came, and with it the Chicago Street Course, NASCAR's very first Cup Series race on city streets. SVG claimed victory in his very first Cup Series start, becoming the first driver since Johnny Rutherford in 1963 to win on his debut. In one single afternoon he instantly became the most discussed driver across all of motorsports. Trackhouse Racing did not waste any time clearing the way for a full-time future with him. The plan looked logical and clear on paper. Spend 2024 learning the finer points of American racing in the Xfinity Series, then step up to full-time Cup competition in 2025. The Xfinity season delivered precisely what most people had predicted: 3 wins, a 12th place finish in the final standings, and enough refined racecraft to make success in the Cup Series feel almost certain. However, the limited Cup starts he made on ovals during that same year painted a far more difficult picture. His best result was only a 26th place finish at Darlington. Obvious red flags were appearing, yet very few people wanted to discuss them because his overwhelming dominance on road courses seemed unbeatable and almost impossible to ignore. SVG himself understood the massive difference better than anyone else. He spoke plainly with no excuses. You have to enter the corners flat out, set the car into the banking, and simply trust the machinery. At that stage he still did not know how to do it, and he openly confessed that the driver was the actual problem. The 2025 season became the year that brutally exposed exactly how steep that learning curve truly was. On road courses, SVG remained untouchable. He won 5 out of the 6 road course races on the schedule. At Mexico City he pulled away to victory by more than 16 seconds, the largest winning margin in the Cup Series in more than 15 years. At Sonoma he led 97 out of 110 laps. He produced another masterclass performance at Chicago. He dominated at Watkins Glen and the Charlotte Roval. By his 38th career Cup start he already had 5 Cup wins. The last driver to reach 5 wins that quickly was Dan Gurney back in 1968. On paper the route to a championship appeared straightforward, but championships are not decided on road courses alone. They are contested across 36 races, and the overwhelming majority of those races take place on ovals. The early 2025 oval results were painful: 31st at Phoenix, 34th at Las Vegas, 32nd at Homestead. For much of the first half of the season he remained stuck outside the top 30 in points, dropping as low as 33rd until the massive Mexico City victory pulled him back into contention. SVG described that difficult stretch with total honesty: "One of the toughest starts to any kind of racing I have ever had." His crew chief Stephen Doran was only in his 2nd Cup season, so both the driver and the engineer were learning together in the most challenging conditions imaginable. Later, SVG reflected on that hard period with the kind of openness that makes him impossible not to respect. "We went through a lot of frustration, but nobody was angry at each other. We just knew we had a lot to learn." By the later stages of 2025, small signs of improvement finally began to appear. His first oval top 10 finish arrived at Kansas in September. He ran 11th at Talladega and 14th at Martinsville. He won Rookie of the Year by a very wide margin and secured his spot in the playoffs. Yet the big, worrying question still hung in the air unanswered: could he actually become competitive on ovals? If the answer was no, if this was his permanent ceiling, then he would never be more than a road course specialist, collecting 6 wins a year while watching the real championship fight unfold without him. The entire 2026 season would ultimately come down to whether that answer turned out to be yes. 7 races into 2026, the data is now screaming yes in the clearest possible way. At the Daytona 500, SVG qualified 13th, led 3 laps, and was running comfortably inside the top 10 before another driver's crash took him out. He finished 30th, but the underlying raw speed was impossible to overlook. At Atlanta, he delivered his best oval finish to date with a 6th-place result, and he achieved it after cutting through the infield grass twice during the race. That single performance lifted him from 28th all the way up to 16th in the standings. At COTA, the road course, he finished second behind Tyler Reddick, ending his 5-race road course winning streak just one short of matching Jeff Gordon's record of 6 consecutive victories. He still picked up 48 points and climbed all the way to 5th in the standings. At Phoenix, he spun twice but battled back strongly to finish 11th. At Las Vegas, misfortune struck early. He slid onto the apron on the opening lap, damaged his splitter, and spent the rest of the day fighting a broken car to a last-place finish. Then came Darlington, and the consistent improvement became impossible to overlook any longer. He finished 14th. That result may not sound impressive on its own until you examine the full context. In 2024, he finished 26th at Darlington. In 2025, he improved to 20th. And now, in 2026, he has advanced to 14th. This is not random luck. This is steady, measurable progress that everyone can see. At Martinsville, he started 5th, ran inside the top 10 for most of the afternoon, collected stage points in both stages, and finished 11th. The team used an aggressive pit strategy that temporarily moved him all the way up to second behind Chase Elliott. Afterward, SVG described it as an awesome day, saying that starting up front makes the racing feel much cleaner and easier to manage. He currently sits 14th in the Cup Series standings with only one top 5 finish all season, yet he has reached that position through pure consistency. He is sitting exactly on the playoff bubble, right where he needs to be to secure a spot in the top 16 and earn a chase berth. The NASCAR Insights data that was released over the Easter break simply confirmed what the on-track performances had already been demonstrating. Using their adjusted points plus index, which compares a driver's finishes against the Cup Series average benchmark of 100, SVG is now performing above average on both drafting tracks and short tracks. Even on regular ovals where he is still technically below the series average, he is dramatically closer than he was in 2025, when his numbers were stuck at a poor 45 on the points index and 47.8 on driver rating. The statistical improvement is not minor. It is a massive leap that proves everything the eye test has been showing for the past 3 months. The other drivers have taken notice as well, and they are speaking openly about it. Denny Hamlin, the clear favorite to win the 2026 championship, said it directly. The trend is continuing that SVG keeps getting better. Elite superior drivers find a way to adapt. That is not empty praise from a friend. It is genuine recognition from arguably the best driver in NASCAR right now that SVG is developing into a serious threat. Chase Elliott, the 2020 champion, was not surprised at all. He said SVG has a great feel for natural balance behind the wheel, and that is a really big deal. Christopher Bell was even more straightforward. SVG is clearly getting the hang of it, and it is not going to be long before he becomes a factor on an oval. Bell added an interesting observation that the current weekend format with only 20 minutes of practice is actually slowing SVG's development. If NASCAR still used the old format with hours of practice, Bell believes SVG would already be even further ahead. Even Joey Logano, a 3-time champion, gave him proper credit. He has obviously had a pretty solid start and he is doing a good job. Ross Chastain, SVG's teammate at Trackhouse Racing, can already see what is coming. Chastain said he could picture rugby balls flying over the grandstands at an oval track someday, referring to SVG's famous victory celebration. That is not just teammate support. That is someone watching the non-stop hard work happening behind the scenes and knowing exactly what the future holds. The internal numbers inside Trackhouse tell their own powerful story. SVG is clearly the strongest performer on the team right now. Chastain sits 5 spots behind him in the standings and has only one top 15 finish all season. SVG has finished ahead of Chastain in 5 of the 7 races so far. Rookie Connor Zilisch, who dominated with 10 Xfinity wins the previous year, is going through his own tough learning curve at the Cup level. NASCAR insider Eric Estep called SVG's development one of the steepest learning curves in the garage right now and named him Trackhouse's most impressive performer so far. What makes this whole story feel bigger than just the numbers is the real humility SVG shows in every moment. When asked if an oval win might be coming soon, he refused to add to the hype. Instead, he answered with honesty, "I am a long way from that. I do not want to win with luck, I want to earn it." He continued, "I am learning things and feeling big improvements every week. I know what is going on now rather than just being a deer in headlights, but I am still a little bit away from a win." That level of self-awareness, that refusal to claim victory before the real work is completely done, makes him someone everyone wants to support. He's not out here talking about championships while sitting 14th in points. He is keeping his head down, doing the hard work, and letting the results speak for themselves. The 2026 season carries bigger stakes than most people realize. NASCAR has brought back the classic chase format, which means there is no safety net anymore. The pressure is higher, the margins are smaller, and SVG must handle this unforgiving new playoff system while he is still mastering the hardest part of American motorsports. He currently sits 14th, right on the playoff bubble. He needs to stay inside the top 16 to make the chase, and he is one bad race away from falling out or one strong run away from locking it in. Road courses will keep him in the fight and stacking points, but the ovals will ultimately decide whether he becomes a real championship contender or stays only a specialist who collects wins on twisting tracks. The bigger meaning of this change goes far beyond one driver's career. We are watching in real time whether an elite driver can truly adapt to a completely different racing style at the highest level possible. The question has always existed in theory, but SVG is now providing real, measurable, week-by-week proof that it can actually be done. Every oval race adds another piece of evidence. Every 14th place finish at Darlington, every 11th at Phoenix, every 6th at Atlanta becomes new proof that top-level talent can move across different racing styles, as long as the driver is willing to be humbled, willing to learn, willing to admit what he does not know, and willing to keep working until he does. There's also the international side that adds even more importance. A driver from New Zealand is taking on America's toughest racing series, learning the one style that Americans have always claimed as their own, and earning real respect from the NASCAR world through nothing but pure hard work and talent. It is a global motorsport view meeting American tradition, and instead of pushing back, there is respect and acknowledgement. The champions are saying it openly. He is getting there, he is figuring it out, and when he fully does, the entire competitive picture will change. The future possibilities are what make the story so exciting every single week. If the current path continues, where does SVG finish in 2026? Does he score his first oval top 5 finish before summer? Does he steal an oval win this season when strategy and circumstances line up while he is running top 5 late in the race? Is a championship truly possible in 2027 or 2028 once he masters ovals while keeping his complete road course dominance? What does the Cup Series look like when one driver can win 5 or 6 road courses a year and suddenly fight for wins on ovals as well? That is no longer just a thought exercise. That is the reality NASCAR is now facing directly. 7 races into 2026, the answer to whether Shane Van Gisbergen can conquer ovals is becoming impossible to deny. He is not there yet, he will be the first to tell you that himself, but the gap is closing quickly. The data confirms what everyone is seeing with their own eyes. The competition is openly admitting it, and the direction is pointing straight upward. SVG came into NASCAR as a road course specialist. He is steadily turning into something much more complete. The question is no longer if he will win on an oval, the question is when. And that changes everything.